Imagine you're at this really amazing rooftop party.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the weather's perfect, the music is great, everyone is laughing, clinking glasses, just talking about how incredible the view is.
Sounds ideal.
Right. But there's this one person standing near the edge, and they aren't looking at the view at all.
What are they looking at?
They're looking at the railing,
Yeah.
literally checking the bolts on the railing.
Oh,
Yeah, they're scanning the crowd to see if anyone has had, maybe a bit too much to drink and might stumble near the edge.
just waiting for disaster.
Exactly. And the thing is, they aren't trying to kill the vibe on purpose. They literally cannot turn off this simulation in their head that is just constantly asking, what is the absolute worst thing that could happen right now, and how do I stop it?
Yeah, that's the person who maps out the fire exits while everyone else is just figuring out what appetizers to order.
Yes, exactly that person. And usually, let's be honest, society calls that person a buzzkill.
Or just overly anxious.
Right. We say they worry too much. But today, we're doing a deep dive that completely flips that script.
It really does.
Yeah.
Because we're looking at research that suggests this person isn't just nervous.
No, not at all. They are actually running a highly sophisticated internal security algorithm. One that honestly might just save your life.
Yeah.
Or your business.
It's a fascinating profile to unpack.
Yeah.
Because we love to celebrate the risk takers, the people who leap without looking.
The move fast and break things crowd.
Right. But civilization is actually built by the people who looked first.
That's just such a good way to put it. So today we are diving back into the Max Energy ME80 personality assessment system. And specifically, we're decoding what they call the SFWN profile.
Yes.
And the report gives them this title that I think it's pretty badass, honestly. They're called the Deep Protector.
It's a very strong title.
Yeah.
And you really have to note that word deep. Because this isn't surface level anxiety. It's not a phobia. It is a structural, foundational drive to protect everything around them.
So here's our mission for this deep dive. We are going to completely take apart the SFWN engine. We want to understand not just what they do, but why they build these walls.
And how their energy matrix actually functions under the hood.
Right, because there are some real contradictions in there we need to talk about.
Yeah.
And we'll also look at the shadow side, where that instinct for protection actually turns into paralysis.
But maybe we should quickly recap for anyone who is totally new to the Max Energy ME80 system.
Yeah, let's do that.
Just to set the stage, this isn't your standard list of personality traits. It's not just telling you if you're friendly or shy.
Right.
It's actually based on energy mechanics.
The flow of energy.
Exactly. It measures how you process stimulus from the outside world, how your internal battery charges up, and then how you push action back out into the world. It's essentially the physics of your psychology.
The physics of your psychology. I love that. So let's look at the physics of the Deep Protector.
Let's do it.
When I read the headline identity for this profile in the report, it felt heavy.
What does it say?
It says, builds firm inner walls under pressure, keeping danger away from self and the team.
It is heavy. But think about the fundamental function of a wall.
To keep things out.
Right, but also to define a safe space inside. The core definition of the SFWN is a guardian. Their primary mode of existence is maintaining these safety boundaries with just incredibly high alertness.
But see, here's my question. Why the high alert? Like, is the world really that dangerous?
To them, yes. Absolutely. And this is the fundamental philosophical shift you have to understand if you want to get this profile.
Yep.
For most people, you and me included probably, our baseline assumption is safety.
Yeah.
You assume the bridge you're driving on will hold your car until you physically see a crack in it.
Right. I just assume things are fine unless someone tells me they aren't.
The SFWN has the exact opposite baseline. Their core philosophy is that safety does not exist naturally. Yeah. To them, the natural state of the universe is entropy. It's chaos. Safety isn't just a given right. It's something you have to actively manufacture, literally minute by minute, through order, through rules, and through defense.
That sounds absolutely exhausting.
It is a massive mental load. They have this inner alert system running continuously.
Even when they're off the clock.
Even when they are supposedly relaxing. There is a background process scanning for anomalies. If a legal contract has a tiny typo, if someone's tone of voice suddenly shifts in a meeting, if a number on a spreadsheet doesn't add up,
they spot it
immediately.
Which brings us to what the report calls their control mechanism. And the phrase here is global view and control philosophy.
Yes.
And there's this concept in the source material that I found so counterintuitive. It's called reverse planning.
Oh, this is one of their most valuable, unique traits. Most people practice forward planning.
Like visualizing the goal.
Exactly. You visualize the wedding day or the big product launch, and then you list the steps to get to that positive goal.
Step 1, book the venue. Step 2, hire the caterer.
Right. But the deep protector practices reverse planning. They start at the catastrophe.
Wait, they start at the disaster?
Yes. They visualize the absolute worst possible outcome. The venue burns to the ground, the caterer gets stuck in traffic, a hurricane hits, and then they work backward from that disaster to put gates up to prevent it.
So they aren't really planning for success at all. They're just actively planning against failure.
Precisely. They are mapping the road to hell so they can build roadblocks on it.
I can see why this causes so much conflict in corporate teams, though.
Oh, constantly.
Because if you have this visionary startup CEO saying, we are going to the moon, and the SFWN on the team is just sitting there saying, well, here are 50 different ways the rocket is going to explode.
It feels like they're killing the dream.
Right. It feels incredibly negative.
It does. But the report is very specific here, and we need to highlight this. Caution is not retreat.
Caution is not retreat.
That is a crucial distinction. They aren't saying don't go to the moon. They are saying, if we're going to go, I want to mathematically guarantee that the oxygen tanks actually work.
They set the defense before taking the action.
Yes, it is pure risk management. It is not cowardice.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's get a little deeper under the hood then.
Sure.
The ME80 system breaks this down into an energy matrix with 4 layers: the IP, IQ, EQ, and the manifestation layer.
Right.
I really want to walk through these sequentially because there is a weird contradiction in here that I need you to explain to me.
Let's do it. Walk me through it.
So generally, the report says their energy is characterized by strong inward defense and sound logic. They build what it calls a perfect closed-loop logic. Let's look at the actual layers. First is the IP layer, which is the inner value. This is the battery, right?
Correct. This is what recharges them.
Yeah.
And for the SFWN, the IP is defined as stable accumulation activation.
Which translates to what in the real world?
It means they are powered by stability and resources. Yeah. They do not get a rush from taking massive gambles.
No adrenaline junkies here.
Exactly. They get a rush from knowing the savings account is fully funded. They want to accumulate safety capital. The more resources, the more rules, the more buffers they have in place, the more charged and energized they feel.
Okay, so that's the battery. Stable, steady, accumulating. Now here's the contradiction I mentioned. The next layer is the IQ layer, the emotional activation layer.
Ah, yes.
I fully expected this to be something like slow, methodical analysis, but the report says their IQ layer is intuition and speed judgment.
This surprises everyone who studies this profile.
How can you be the cautious, slow one and the fast, intuitive one at the exact same time?
Because we tend to think of safety people as the ones slowly plodding through a giant clipboard checklist. But the SFWN's radar is actually incredibly fast. It's subconscious.
Subconscious scanning.
Yes. Think about a veteran Secret Service bodyguard. They don't have to stop and do a complex math equation to know that a guy in the back of the crowd looks dangerous.
They just feel it.
They just know.
Yeah.
Instantly. That is the SFWN's IQ layer. When a threat appears, or even when a normal pattern just breaks slightly, their detection is immediate. They smell the smoke long before anyone else even sees the fire.
Wow. Okay, so the radar is lightning fast. What about the EQ layer, the decision calculation?
The EQ here is emotional perception and resonance.
Again, very interesting, because we usually picture these highly logical protector types as sort of cold robots, but they actually have high emotional perception.
They do, but they use it differently than most people. They aren't necessarily using their EQ to deeply bond or share feelings with you. They use it to sense the environment. They are reading the room for risk.
So they can feel the tension.
Exactly. They can literally feel if a boss is acting erratic today. They can feel if a client is hiding something or lying. They use human emotion as a barometer for instability.
And if the emotional vibe is chaotic,
their alarm bells go off immediately.
That is fascinating. And then finally, the manifestation layer. How does all this internal processing actually come out into the real world?
The report says it manifests as impact and action. But here's the key caveat. For the deep protector, their action is almost exclusively directed towards securing a boundary.
Not pushing forward, but locking down.
Right. They act to close a vulnerable door. They act to write a new strict policy. They act to block a risky path.
So to summarize this whole matrix, that they run on stability in the IP. They have a lightning-fast intuition for trouble in the IQ. They use emotions to sense risk in the EQ, and they act by building walls in the manifestation layer.
It is a highly formidable combination. It basically makes them a self-contained fortress.
Which leads perfectly into their deep analysis inner trait. The report creates a golden rule for them. It says, set defense first.
Set defense first, yes. Imagine you are about to cross a frozen lake.
Okay.
Some personality types just run out onto the ice and hope for the best.
The visionary.
Right. The SFWN will not take a single step until they have tested the ice, calculated the weight distribution, and probably tied a safety rope to a tree on the shore.
Secure the boundary first, and only then do you have room to move.
Precisely. And the way they do this in everyday life is brilliant. The report says they decompose risk into controllable units.
Controllable units. Talk me through that.
The world is just too big and scary to control all at once. You can't do it. So they break it down. Their inner monologue is like, I can't control the stock market, but I can control our quarterly budget.
I can't control the weather, but I can control the structural integrity of the roof.
Exactly. They systematically add tiny rules and buffers to every single unit of work they can get their hands on.
So they're building these micro-defenses everywhere.
Yes, to prevent a small deviation from snowballing into a massive disaster.
But I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
In the modern business world, speed is kind of everything. The whole mantra is agile, move fast, pivot. Doesn't this approach just slow everything down to an absolute crawl?
That is the trade-off.
Mm-hmm.
And the report explicitly addresses this. It says they are completely willing to slow one step. They will trade speed for long-term stability every single time. They want to ensure the system can actually bear the weight of the growth.
So they really are the brakes on the sports car.
They are. But listen, if you were driving a Ferrari at 200 miles per hour, you really, really want those brakes to work.
Fair point. Very fair point. But let's talk about when those brakes lock up.
The shadow side.
Right. Every profile in the ME80 has a shadow blind spot. What happens when the SFWN just goes too far?
The shadow for this profile is called over-tightening.
Over-tightening, like stripping a screw because you forced it.
Or like building the walls of the fortress so thick that you literally run out of air inside. When their defenses get too high, they block out all flexibility. The report notes that long-term, high-level defense mechanisms make them start treating change itself as a threat.
Just the concept of change.
Yes. This is exactly where they get that reputation for being incredibly stubborn or resistant to new ideas.
It's not just them trying to be difficult, though.
No, it's actually cognitive overload. Remember that light and fast IQ layer we talked about? The one scanning for threats?
Yeah.
If you walk into a meeting and say, hey guys, let's reorganize the entire department structure today.
Their radar just goes crazy.
It lights up with 1,000 red alerts all at once. They start processing way too much threat data.
So they just get bogged down.
Their judgment speed suffers. The anxiety spirals. And here is the behavior that really confuses their coworkers. Under this extreme pressure, they don't usually yell or throw a fit. They withdraw.
They give the silent treatment.
They use silence and physical distance for self-protection. They stop communicating entirely because they're using all their mental energy trying to process the risk internally.
I have seen this dynamic play out so many times. The whole team is waiting for an answer on a project, and the SFWN person just goes stone cold silent. And the rest of the team thinks, oh, they hate the idea. They're refusing to cooperate.
And that is the tragic misunderstanding of this profile. Others view that need for time and adjustment as total negation.
But internally, they're just overwhelmed by the data.
Right. But because they don't actively say out loud, hey, I'm overwhelmed right now, the collaboration cost just goes through the roof.
Yeah.
Boundaries without flexibility make them very hard to work with in those moments.
Which is a perfect segue to segment 6 of our deep dive, social relationships.
Yes.
The overarching theme here is calm line holding.
Calm line holding. In personal relationships, SFWNs are the rock. They are reliable, they are restrained, and they are incredibly principle-focused.
And the report mentions they value confidentiality highly.
Extremely highly. If you tell them a secret, it goes into a steel vault. It is never coming out.
That genuinely sounds like a great friend to have in your corner.
It is. But the vibe can be a little tricky to navigate. Working or living with them brings this undeniable feeling of safety, but it also brings a feeling of distance, sometimes even pressure.
Because of the walls.
Right. And there is a hidden cost to this. They rarely, if ever, say their inner worry or their fatigue out loud. They honestly believe it is their solemn duty to hold the line completely alone.
That sounds incredibly lonely.
It is a very lonely way to live.
Yeah.
And it creates a specific conflict style that the ME80 calls cold handling.
Cold handling. That sounds, wow, pretty cold.
It means that if there is a conflict or a crisis, they immediately try to stabilize the practical situation first, before they even touch the emotional side of it.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, say your car breaks down on the side of a busy highway, and you are terrified and crying. The SFWN is instantly calling the tow truck, setting up road flares, and checking the insurance policy. They are not hugging you yet.
They are fixing the literal problem.
Right. Because to them, fixing the dangerous problem is the hug. It's how they show love. But to an emotional partner, it feels like total indifference. Why aren't you listening to my feelings?
And the SFWN is just thinking, I am listening. I'm getting us off this dangerous highway.
Exactly. The risk here is that without really clear communication, these misunderstandings just accumulate over years. Because they aren't sharing their internal reasoning, people just see the cold wall. They don't see the deep care behind it.
That's incredibly profound. Let's pivot, though, to where this personality type is just an absolute superstar.
Yes, their business value.
We've talked a lot about the anxiety in the walls, but in the right professional role, this personality type is a secret weapon. The report calls their core advantage safety foundation building.
Think about it like this. If you are building a 100-story skyscraper, you absolutely want an SFWN pouring the concrete foundation.
Their superpower is identifying the red lines, the absolute limitations that simply cannot be crossed.
The principle they operate on is nothing can go wrong. That is an incredibly high standard to hold a business to.
They exchange speed for system durability. So, practically speaking, where do we put them in a company? The report lists some highly recommended fields.
Risk and compliance is the most obvious one. You want an SFWN reading the fine print of your vendor contracts. You want them ensuring total legal operation and regulatory compliance.
What about safety and quality management?
Absolutely essential. If you are in manufacturing or food safety, aviation, healthcare, you desperately want a deep protector establishing those zero-tolerance standards. You want the person who literally loses sleep over a 0.1% variance.
Makes total sense. The report also highlights operations and process governance.
They thrive there because they love systems. To an SFWN, a system is just codified safety. Good governance reduces systemic risk.
And here is one that I think is just huge right now: secret and data protection.
Guarding core assets. Preventing data leaks. In the modern digital age, the person whose natural instinct is to build impenetrable walls is your single most valuable asset. They are quite literally a human firewall.
It really reframes the whole personality when you look at it through that lens. They aren't blocking the business from moving forward. They are securing the assets so the business can actually survive to see tomorrow.
Exactly. They are the anchor.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the SFWN Deep Protector, what is the big takeaway? How should we ultimately view them?
The conclusion in the ME80 report sums it up beautifully. It says the SFWN is not blocking progress. They are paving the road for long-term stability.
Paving the road.
Because you can't drive fast on a road full of potholes. They fill the potholes. When we reframe our understanding and see their protection as a deep sense of responsibility rather than just annoying conservatism.
They become the organization's quietest and most reliable force.
Exactly.
So if you are a listener out there who works with an SFWN, maybe realize that their no isn't a rejection of you personally. It's just a not yet. It's not safe.
And if you are an SFWN listening to this, realize that your walls are your greatest strength. But they can also become your prison if you forget to put a door in them.
That actually leads perfectly to our final thought for the listener today. Just a provocative question to chew on. If you relate to this profile, ask yourself, are your walls keeping you safe or are they keeping you stuck?
And for those of you working with one, are you mistaking their silence for disinterest when it's actually deep protective processing?
Two very heavy but necessary questions.
Indeed.
Well, before we sign off, we absolutely have to give credit where credit is due. This entire deep dive, the framework, the terminology, all these insights, they come directly from the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report.
It's a truly profound system. We only covered one of the profiles today, but the way it maps energy flow is just really unique in the psychology space.
It really is. If you want to understand more about your own energy matrix or maybe figure out why your boss or your partner is the way they are, visit the official website at www.maxenergylife.com.
Or if you are on social media, you can search for Max Energy IU or Met Energy IU Do on Facebook.
Highly recommend checking those out. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the mind of the Guardian. Until next time, stay curious and, maybe check your perimeter fence one last time.
Just to be safe.
Just to be safe. Bye, everyone.